Hold on, okay. I think we are streaming, so I'm going to go ahead and start right there. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming, and I hope we're streaming. Thomas, if you'll go over and look for me, or Terry. No, Terry, you can't. Thomas, if you'll go look. And it's good to have everybody here tonight. And again, Terry and I are filling in for Rabbi Pesach, who's kindly taking a little bit of a break. And Terry is in the captain's chair. I'm kindly down in the engine room, and everybody else is wandering around the ship trying to find some supper, right? Is that what we're all trying to do? So again, we're so glad to have you here. Listen, before we get too in depth in the class/teaching tonight that Terry has prepared for us, we want, if you're watching by YouTube, we would love for you to subscribe to that YouTube channel and share it to your friends, maybe send it into a message. Also, if you're watching on Facebook, we're asking that you would share that around and give us a thumbs up on YouTube and Facebook. Also, I want to remind you to give tzedakah, give to charity. I'm giving this charity tonight in honor of Rabbi Pesach for his strength. And so that's what we're going to do on that. Remember, it will change you, change your family, change your community, and change the world. So, Terry, do you have anything to add before we get into this tonight?
No, not really. It's been one of them weeks, you know.
It has been one of those weeks. Yes, yes, it has. So, Terry, I'm gonna bring you up into speaker view, and I'm just gonna just turn it over to you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's see. We've got the Zoom room. We've got the B'nai Noah Connection with Israel Facebook page. And we have the Torah for the Nations YouTube channel and the radio station, right? Scotty, want to welcome everyone tonight for tonight's class. Kind of excited about tonight because of what it's going to be leading up into the future. I guess I'm excited. I've been actually getting ready a little bit for next week as well. But I want to thank everybody that's been coming to the class and keep sending in your questions and comments so we can know how to address them, maybe do classes on them. Plus, we may be having a class that will even cover that. We'll let you know in advance. We try to about the classes when we can. I want to just do a little bit of a recap of last week. Last week, we learned about what it meant to make a new religion and by adding a commandment that we were not commanded. We examined the era of Enosh, who was the generation that began to worship the stars and the elements of the creation. Now, it did not start out as being a bad thing. They seen that the stars and the planets were servants of the Creator, and they felt, well, we need to give honor to the servants. The problem is that honor turned into worshiping the servants. Then the servants themselves became God themselves as time went on. We also looked at Aaron's sons. We seen that they put fire in their pans and they ran into the holy place there. It cost them their lives. We seen that the Creator had already supplied everything they needed to do their job within the tabernacle. But in their zeal, they wanted to add to, they wanted to change and modify what was required of them. And even when when the Creator gave Moses to write down on the mountain that day, within that, it says they did what he did not command them. And so we've seen the importance of not inventing or thinking what we think that God wants. What God wants, he's already stated. He doesn't need our help in that. And we learn that through Enosh and the sons of Aaron, that the Creator doesn't need our help inventing what we think how he ought to be served. That's a chunk to chew on. So last week we discussed that. If you have an opportunity to go to Torah for the Nations YouTube channel, it's already up there if you didn't get to hear last week's class. Through this examination, we discovered that the Creator did not give mankind a religion to follow in our service to him, but he gave us a code of behavioral guidelines to live by. And let me say it again. The Creator did not give Adam, nor did he give Noah or any of those a religion to follow. He gave them a code of behavioral guidelines on how to live as a human being. It wasn't till later down the road when man decided, oh, we need to make a religion of this and do this and do this. Oh, we need to change. We need to add this. This isn't enough. And that's where we got into trouble and where we're at today with a lot of the stuff that goes on in our world. Well, last week a question was asked. Scotty brought up that we didn't get into, that I'm going to get into tonight. And it was, well, how do we get back? How do we get back? What we need to understand is that every human being as an individual has their own personal journey. Somewhere in that journey, there may be an aha moment, a specific thing that you learn, a specific thing that grabs your heart and your soul, that helps you bring you to that level to journey back. I like calling it back to Genesis because that's where, we go back to Genesis is where we learn what is expected from us from the beginning. The Creator tells us by the prophets that he doesn't change. And so he hasn't changed. And our duties before him as humanity has never changed. Not one thing has changed.
Terry, can I
go ahead?
I apologize for jumping. I want to add to that question because a couple of more questions come in similar to that. And I really like the way that one gentleman, his name is Mike, put it. Mike said, how do we get back to having a relationship with the Creator without the aid of a religion?
Oh, that is an amazing question. It really is.
So I want to throw that in.
And that's why I'm excited about tonight, because we're going to be getting into that. And I hope Mike's listening tonight, and maybe I can help him out and show him what is expected of us. And like I said, everyone has their own journey. And not everyone arrives at the same point at the same time. Not everyone arrives at it in the same way. There are similarities. But everyone has their own, because our lives are individually tailored for our relationship with the Creator. He makes every one of us individual, unique, and even our journeys is unique. And even though we may come back to the same point of this behavioral guideline code that he's given, we all might arrive at it a little bit differently at different times and different ways. But when we get there, there's a freedom and an amazing connection that you were going to make with the Creator that you've never had before. It made the difference in my life. Totally, radically changed who I was as a person as I began to get into the studies of this behavioral code, which we will be doing here very shortly, and I'll explain a little bit more about that at the end. Our first step is to recognize where we are. Our first step, kind of like in the different kind of programs out there of addictions and different things like that, is to find out where you're at, to admit where you're at. That's a big one, to admit where you're at. And so I wanted to go back and read this small section from the Mission of Torah that we covered last week, because this is where we were all at. Somewhere on this path, somewhere in this realm, we all were there or are there. In this discussion with Enosh, it says, as the years passed, talking about when they began to worship the stars and all that, but time had passed from what they originally began. It says, as the years passed, God's glorious and awesome name was forgotten by all of mankind. It was no longer part of their speech, part of their thought. They no longer knew him. And this is going to be hard, but I had to admit this to myself. I'm going to say to myself, I was born and raised in a religion. I thought I knew him, but I didn't. Because it says here, thus all the common people and the women and the children would know only the image of wood or stone and the temples of stone in which they were trained from their childhood to bow down and to serve, and whose name they swore. We only know what we know. We were all born into something. And I like using the analogy and understanding that there is a birthright that we're all born into, but we're shortly kidnapped after birth. And then we were brought into these religions like Enosh, made. The wise men of that generation created this whole system. They created a form of worship and who they should worship and the names that they should worship. And that system that began with Enosh has never gone away. It's still with us to this day all over the earth. So we have to understand where we are at. And we all have to admit that we were raised in things that we believed. And I'm not pointing any fingers about saying this one's wrong, that one's wrong. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying we were all raised in areas that we were taught from the people before us, because that's all they knew. That's all they knew. So we can't even point a finger and blame them. But by the glory of the Creator and the time that we are in, there is something happening all over the earth, and people in all kinds of countries is coming to this understanding that there was a code, not a religion, a code of behavior that was given to us as mankind that got replaced by man's imaginations of thinking they knew better. Because see, we've got free will. We have free choice. We can do that. And the Creator has allowed us to do that. Because if he hadn't, he would have took away our free choice. And he gave us free choice. He gave us free will to make our mistakes. But our mistakes how can I say this? Because I've even taught on this and eventually we'll be teaching on it again. Matter of fact, there's a shoot. I wish I had written down the scripture right now. I believe it's in the Proverbs. It talks about for the righteous to be righteous, they have to make mistakes. I wish I had written that because it was in a different thread that I was involved with this week. And for the righteous to be righteous, there has to be mistakes. Some people think that a righteous person can't make mistakes, or if you've made mistakes, you can't be righteous. But you can't be righteous without mistakes. And and I wish I had the reference, and I don't have it because it just came to my mind of that conversation I was in this week, and is really, really, really interesting. So we're going to be getting into some of that as well, not that exact passage. As the Rambam and the Torah sages of Israel teaches, the world religions are designed by man. And every one of them is followed by a specific way. They blindly follow them on faith because that's all they knew. Okay, I see Scott. Scott, you got something. Oh, okay, you grabbing your cup.
I do have something, Terry, and I apologize. I was waiting until you asked. Now that you've asked, now when you make the statement, the righteous, make that statement again about the mistakes.
I'm paraphrasing it. I will look it up, and I know where to go to look it up. I can't do it this moment. But the righteous makes mistakes. Okay,
and to examine that, does that mean now we're not talking about a premeditated?
No, not a premeditated. It's like this isn't the passage, but King Solomon says, I believe it was King Solomon, says the righteous fall 7 times. That's not the exact passage that I'm talking about earlier, but that it is in line with that.
So what it does when we make a mistake, it helps us the next time to make the correct decision.
Right. I tell you what, it's really a beautiful thing. Rabbi Lazer Brody teaches a teaching from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov that is very powerful in helping a person, because we've been taught that we're unworthy. We fall. We're not worthy of God's grace. Oh no. It's even Rabbi Nachman of Breslov taught he says every decline is preparation for the next ascension. And how, in physical terms, how do we know that? I'm an American. I love American baseball. You see that pitcher on the mound? He's staring right down at that batter. What's he got to do with that ball to get it there? He's got to take it backwards before it can go forwards. Every step up has a step below on a ladder. And Rabbi Nachman says, for every decline is a preparation for the next ascent. And get this, the present decline that you're experiencing right now is higher than your last ascent. So we've got to make we as humans are designed imperfect on purpose, because if we were designed perfectly, we would not grow.
I just got to give you an amen on that, Terry.
Wasn't even going to get into this, Scotty, but I told you I was excited. I'm excited because this is amazing. In our lesson about Enosh and the sons of Aaron, we learned a very important lesson. We are not to create a new religion, or as we understand, there is no word religion in Hebrew. I mean, the Hebrew word is dot. It means knowledge. We're not to create a new knowledge that was not given to us by the Creator. So how do we get back to the original knowledge given to us? I'm going to just read a little bit of a shadow right here of Genesis chapter 25, verse 22. Gives us some insight. This is when Rivka, the wife of Yitzhak, the daughter-in-law of Abraham, when she was pregnant with Jacob and Esau. It says the children moved violently against her. Each other within her womb. And when this happened, she said, "What's going on? Why am I like this?" And then God told Moses to write this down. By the way, everything we're reading here, God told Moses to write it down. She says, and she went, or the Hebrew, or the passage says, the text, as Scotty likes to say, "Why am I thus?" And she went to inquire of God. Now, the Torah scholars and the sages of Israel have studied this stuff for 3,400 years. It says, according to them, according to the sages, she went, because they asked, where did she go? Why? She could have stood there and prayed, but said she went somewhere. So it says, according to the sages of Israel, she went to Shem and Ever. Now, Shem and Ever. Shem, the son of Noah. And according to Jewish tradition, Shem was Melchizedek, the righteous king. Because it says here, she went to Shem and Ever, the guardians of the tradition received by Noah, to inquire of God through them to hear her response. They weren't intermediaries. She went to learn the tradition that was received by Noah. And for her to be able to hear from God, she had to learn what was the tradition from Noah that he received. Who did he receive it from? He received it from Adam. And what he received was the behavioral guidelines of humanity. That's what he received. That was the tradition. And through her tapping into the tradition of the behavioral guidelines that was given to Adam, she was able to hear what she needed to hear from God. That's powerful. I get excited when I think of this, and when I meditate on it, and when I read it.
Can I throw something in there, Terry? I hate to keep coming.
No. Go ahead.
Right down the street, if I'm right, you can help me. Or right there where Rabbi Pesach lives is still the cave or the school of Shem and Ever.
Yes, the school the school that they held is now called the Cave of Shem and Ever, right there in Safat, Israel, right down within walking distance from where Rabbi Pesach of Torah for the Nations, his class, lives. And he shared some pictures. There's a synagogue in there now. He shared some pictures. I think there was a wedding or something heading there. But it is the spot where they set up a school to teach the tradition that was received from Noah that was passed to Shem. And through that, he became Melchizedek, the righteous king. And he taught Abraham and Isaac and them. And then Abraham brought tithes to him because he was the righteous king. And Safat is one of the holy cities of Israel. There's, if I remember right, Rabbi says there's 4. Of course, Jerusalem being the number 1. And so, and I can't remember, I think Tiberias is another one, because I know Rabbi Akiva is buried at Tiberias. Not 100% sure on that one, but Safat is. Safat's a very spiritual city. There's a lot that's been going on there for a long time in the spiritual sense there. So anyhow, let me ask that question again. How do we get back to the original knowledge given to mankind? We go to the guardians of the tradition. Just like Rivka, the daughter-in-law of Abraham, went and tapped in to the traditions. She went to the guardians of the tradition, which at that time was Shem and Ever and Noah. Now, today, since Mount Sinai, the event of Mount Sinai, the Jews, the Yehudim, as it's mentioned in the Hebrew, are the guardians of the tradition. They are the ones that the Creator gave this tradition to Moses. God gave the tradition to Moses on Mount Sinai, and Moses gave it to them. It says in Psalms 147, how do we know this? King David wrote about it in Psalms 147, 19 through 20. It says, he declared his word unto Jacob, his statutes his statutes and his ordinances unto Israel. He has not dealt so with any other nation. And for his ordinances, they have not even known them, because they are the guardian. Israel is the guardian of the tradition that was given to Noah. It was passed down from Adam, given to Noah. Noah passed it down to Shem and Ever, and they passed it to Abraham, and Abraham passed it to his children, and his children, his descendants at Mount Sinai, God sealed it. The rest of the world would then hear it from the priest. They became the priestly nation. See, before then, it was passed orally. See, for over 2,000 years, this tradition was passed orally within each family. But and at Mount Sinai, God brought the tradition of Noah under the covenant of Mount Sinai. And therefore, they're now the guardians of this covenant for or this tradition for the nations. That's why it's dangerous just to pick up the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and read it and think that it's all speaking to you. It's not. We are included in there. Our instruction is included in there, primarily in the book of Genesis. But there are other laws that's given to Israel that we can tap into in a rational sense, like the laws of business. We tap into the laws of business and different things like that have a rational sense that you can practically come up with them on your own. So he declared his word unto Jacob and his statutes and his ordinances to Israel, and he's not done like that with any other nation. That's why we know that they are now the holders of the tradition. That is why now, just like when Rivka went to Shem and Ever, who were the guardians of the tradition of Noah, now Israel are the guardians of the tradition of Noah. just like Shem and Ever was. Scotty, do you have your Chumash where you could read a verse for me?
I will get it here. What verse you want me to look up real quick?
Oh, wait a minute, not your Chumash. I'm sorry, your Tanakh. Because I want you to go to Zechariah 8. Do you have it handy? If not, I can flip.
It's
no, I don't have my Tanakh. Pull it up.
Can I pull it up? I'll just pull it up here. Go ahead.
Just pull it up. Zechariah 8:23. Sorry, I meant to ask you to do it beforehand. It's going to take me a sip. I pulled a fast one on the engineer.
Okay, Terry. 8:23.
Yes, Zechariah 8:23.
Let's see if I can. This is live, folks. This is not recorded. Is this the one that says, so said the Lord of hosts, in those days when 10 men of all nations, of all the languages of the nations. I want to read that one more time, Terry. So said the Lord of hosts, in those days when 10 men of all the languages of the nation shall take a hold of the skirt of a Jewish man, saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you.
Okay, this is a prophecy that actually in this day, we are in the headwaters of. At some point in some time, it's going to be something very, very major. We are just in the beginnings of this happening. That passage says that they're going to grab a hold of the garment of a Jew. That's in English. In Hebrew, it says Yehud, the Yehuda, the tribe of Judah, which that's who we go to today. The tribe of Judah is the predominant tribe in which we learn these traditions from. They point us when we go. Just like I spent 7 years at the gate of conversion when I was studying. I thought about it and studied, prepared to do a conversion. Along the whole path, every rabbi I studied under, not one of them that did not do this. They pointed to the tradition of Noah, the behavioral guidelines. Because see, you don't have to convert to have a walk with God. Mankind does not have to become Jewish, does not have to join the Jewish nation to have a relationship with God, because there's one already there set. There is already a relationship with God that is already set for the non-Jewish nations. It's in place, been in place since Adam. He said he didn't change. He's not changed. And so just like Rivka going to Shem and Ever, the guardians of the tradition of Noah, we go to Yehud, to the Yehuda, to the Jew, to get the tradition of Noah explained to us. They point us back to Noah as the non-Jewish nations. I know that's hard. That goes against a lot of what's taught in this world. But it's the truth. You want to know how to get back, you've got to go to the guardian of the tradition and let them show you. They're not your mediator. Yeah, say it for me, Scotty. Intermediary. They're not that. They're not the middleman. They're the teacher. They're the teacher that will point you as a student in the direction you need to go. that will allow you to develop within what God created in you. You don't worship them. You don't bow down to them. You honor them. They're teachers. We honor them like we would any teacher or professor at a university, someone who's taken the time to earn that title. We honor them and we respect them. But they are the guardians, and the only way to get back is to go to them and let them say, okay, this is just like what they did with Rivka. They gave her what she needed to know to hear from God. They do that for us. They say, here's the behavioral guidelines that God gave mankind. Go and study them, go and learn them, go and live them, and you will hear from the Creator. Go ahead, Scotty. I see you.
Well, I've got a great question, but I know you are about to go there, so I can't put it in right now. I'll wait till after. I know where you're going, and I don't want to drive you there. I want to follow you there. So,
I got you. I understand. All right. We've gone to the guardians, and they've pointed their finger back to Noah, all of humanity's patriarch. Everybody this side of the flood is a son of Noah, as we say in Hebrew, B'nai Noah, B'nai Noach, the family of Noah. And as I've taught in other classes, I'm not going to go into detail, Israel was separated from us. It's talked about, it's told to us, it's known. They were separated as a nation for a specific duty as a priesthood. They're still B'nai Noach, but they are the older brother. How do I know they're the older brother? Exodus 4:22. And the Creator spoke unto Moses and said, go unto Pharaoh and say that Israel is my son, my firstborn. They have firstborn duties. And therefore they are separate from the rest of us. They have a lot more responsibilities because they are the firstborn, just like in any family. Like when my grandfather, my mom's side of the family, when his dad passed away, he was in the 8th grade. It was his duty as the oldest son to take over the farm. He had a lot more duties to do. His younger siblings still had to go. They went to school. They did this, but he wasn't at school. He was there plowing. He was there, doing the work of the farm so they could keep a roof over their head and food on the table. But he had more duties to do than his siblings because of that responsibility. And that's the same way with Israel. They're chosen to be the priest, and they are giving more responsibilities. Not that who they are, but that's their duty. The rest of us have a duty. We're not void. We're not without, as I even talked about last week. So now we've gone to the guardian, just like Rivka. I want to hear from God. In the very second, now the Torah is divided up into weekly readings so they can be read throughout the year. And they read it every year. It has a starting point and ending point. And it's a circle. The very second reading is called Parsha Noach. It is the portion of Noah. Is the second reading. And it starts out like this in Genesis chapter 6, verse 9 and 10. These are the offspring of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. Verse 10, Noah had begotten 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, the Torah does not tell us. The Creator didn't tell Moses, these are the generations of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. No, the offspring of Noah, or it says the offspring, Torah, offspring of Noah didn't begin with Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The offspring of Noah directly says he was a righteous man. Perfect, which that word perfect can mean wholehearted or even simple. He was simple. He wasn't a complicated person. And he walked with God. This is where the guardians point us back to, and this is the beginning. And so, I want to discuss this issue of, yeah, we got time. We'll make sure. I took some rabbit trails a little earlier. I want to make sure I don't go too long on you. I want real quick. I'm going to read some information to you about Noah being a righteous man. I'm reading this from a book that is written. It's called Noah, the Flood and the Failure of Man, according to the Midrash Rabbah. And I'm going to be reading from Parshas 30, Midrash 5, and Parshas 30, Midrash 6, Midrash 5 and Midrash 6. I'm going to read portions of this that deals with the righteousness of Noah and how we can relate. He says, it says, these are the generations of Noah. And it says, surely the scripture should have been written that these are the offsprings of Noah, Shem, and etc. But it wasn't. One would have expected the statement to say that these are the generation of Noah, which should have been followed by the name of Shem, his oldest son. However, the text instead says Noah, by having his name appear twice, which is a meaning, and one after the other is actually a statement that means, it says when the two names appear together, they derive the word manuka, meaning comfort. However, that he was comfort to himself and comfort to the world, comfort to his fathers, comfort to his children, a comfort to the celestial beings and to mortals, a comfort to this world and the world to come. Now, the Sefer Sion, which is a book, was written by, I think his name is Rabbi Adler, which is a commentary on, let me make sure here. Not Adler, Rabbi Yitzhak Zav Yadler. I looked at that before and I overlooked the Y. It was a book that was written where he writes the commentary on the Midrash Rabbah. And he notes and interprets the expression as describes Noah about him being righteous in his generation. Noah made to safeguard his future generations. It was only later in life that the biblical calculation of his children were born. He first had to prepare himself to control his own evil inclination and to concentrate on doing good things. As a result of this preparation, he not only brought well-being to himself, but he became a very important asset to the world. By the same token, he had prepared himself to be a caring and morally upright father. Thus, he became an important model for his children. He also did his best to bring to his life a close relationship with God. As it is written, Noah walked with God. Since we are called to emulate God's behavior, as it were, the world as well, for an example, just as God is merciful, so should we be merciful. Noah was also highly principled in relationship to his fellow man. It follows also therein that this kind of behavior in the world earns one's admission into the world to come. The important lesson that we learn from this midrash is that the character is the most important aspect of human personality. It is more important than progeny. It is more important than wealth. It is more important than leadership and power. When it says that Noah, that he was a righteous and wholehearted, it is telling us something about him, the greatest possible importance. Because he was truly righteous and truly wholehearted, it follows that he was able to control his desires and passions and dedicate them to higher principles. This gave him an importance in the world at large and rendered him the model to be followed. This same character helped to mold the relationship as parents to his children and human beings to his fellow man. We should not read these verses with the idea that his teaching simply relegated to Noah. And this should be the goal and the motivation of every human being in the world. Moral character should be the main goal of education, and everything should be done to produce a student who will emerge as a citizen with high moral principles. Can you see what pointing us back to Noah helps us understand? And when we begin to grow in the morality that God desires for us through the behavioral guidelines that he gave, then we become citizens with a high moral principle. When it says that about Noah that he was righteous and wholehearted, it means that he had self-control over his inner passions, therefore was a good influence for his children. When he was tamim or perfect or wholehearted, which is meant that his behavior with people, whether regarding commercial things or personal matters, was done in truthfulness and justice. Another meaning implied that righteousness and wholeheartedness is that Noah was righteous in his deeds, wholehearted in his life. This means that he was righteous in those things that pertain to his own being, such as his bodily passions, as well as his behavior, for instance, never interfering with anything that belonged to someone else, and that he was wholehearted in his dealings with people. His well-being and as a person extended out into the world. This personal discipline also, of course, had a wonderful effect on his children. As for the midrashic idea that the behavior extended not only to earthly beings, but even to the heavenly celestial beings as well. And this is what it was meant that he walked with God. He was thus able to influence his fellow human beings. These are the offsprings of Noah. I'm going through this midrash. Thus is it written in Proverbs 11:30, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. Now, this midrash talks about, I'm going to read this to you, and then I'm going to go back and read from Proverbs. In his work, TFTN, Rabbi Yodler was somehow startled by this fact, in Proverbs uses the word fruit and then the expression tree of life. After all, a tree is not a fruit. It seems it should have said the fruit of life. But however, then, how do we explain the use of the term tree? A tree does indeed produce fruit. A tree is the symbol of life. Just as the tree produces fruit, so should we produce good deeds and the observance of the commandments, which are true fruits of the moral and ethical life. And further, we should do these things without thinking too much of their reward, either in this world or the world to come. Just as the goal of a tree is to produce fruit, So the goal of a good deed should be to produce another good deed. If one wants to use the word reward, then the reward would be to produce one good deed after another. And may it be so as long as we live. Now, seed for thought. In the beautiful interpretation by Rabbi Yodler, the tree of life is also a tree produces those moral and ethical principles that are the fruits of the good life. Does a tree demand a reward for its fruits? It does not. Why then should a tree of life, which is the human being, demand a reward for its ethical behavior, either in this world or the next? The ethics of the Father says that a reward of a commandment is the doing of another commandment. This is really all the reward that is necessary for one who believes that the goal of a spiritual life is the imitation of God. Just as he is merciful, we should be merciful. Just as he is righteous, we should be righteous. No reward is required in life other than this. If we could only live this way and help others to live this way, we would be justifying creation. Now, the Proverbs 11 in verse 30 says that the fruit, I want you to listen to this. This is good. The fruit of a righteous one is a tree of life. Rashi, one of the great Torah scholars of Israel, says the reward for deeds of the righteous is a tree of life for the world. But Suda goes on, he says, the deeds of the righteous are like a tree that brings life to the world. And Rabbi Hirsch adds on to that one, says something beneficial grows from his every deed, giving life to his surroundings. The fruit of a righteous one is a tree of life. I want to expound upon this in a physical understanding. Let's take an oak tree. An oak tree comes up and it grows. It's living as I've explained in the past of the law, the divine law of the according to species that we get from Genesis 1, verse 11 and 12. That everything is according to its species. Like I said, Israel is its own species. It has its own duties. The nations, the rest of us, we are our own species. Within our species, we have cultures and things like that. It doesn't separate us. It's just we have different shades of colors. We have different cultures. We have different nationalities. Some live in the north, some live in the south, some live in the east, some live in the west, some live up where it's all nothing but snow, and some live in the beautiful islands that we all dream about. But we all have our places where the Creator planted each one of us. That's why I said each one of us at the beginning of this class, every one of us has our own individual journey back to what we're talking about, back to the righteousness of Noah that is shared with his children. That is us. We are his children. But this tree, it grows. This oak tree grows, and it produces acorns. Okay? The acorns feeds the squirrels and the chipmunks, the deer, and other animals. The shade, these trees grow huge and they produce big shade, produces a shelter in heat and from rain for animals and for humans. The tree itself can be cut down, and the oak can be fashioned into cabinets, into tables, into chairs, and beautiful, beautiful pieces of furniture. This tree, in its service to the Creator, the way it was designed, gets no reward of itself other than its whole life is to give to everything else in creation. This is the lesson we are supposed to learn here. This is the lesson that the righteous one is a tree of life. An oak tree gives life to everything around it, whether it be food, whether it be shade, or whether it be the wood itself to produce things for others. It benefits none of this in its own. There's no reward that tree gets other than its full service of giving to everything around it. This is the example of the righteousness that we are supposed to live by, that we become a tree of life, that everything around us benefits from the fruit that we put out. And our reward is to continue to bear more fruit, to give more, to give more, to give more. That is the lesson of righteousness that the guardians of Israel is pointing toward you and me in the nations, that our fruit is to be a tree of life to the rest of the world. And so if I'm being a tree of life for everyone around me, then the ones that are around me are being a tree of life for me. You're not left out. Nothing in the world gets left out when everybody becomes the fruit of the tree of life, or they become a tree of life to the world. No one gets left out. How beautiful is that? There is no hunger. There is no war. There's no greed. All the ills of this world can be solved by us going to the guardians of the tradition of Noah and let them teach us what it means to be the fruit of the tree of life. Let me just read that again real quick. It said that the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. If our fruit is life to somebody else, there's no need for the ills. They will be gone. This, to me, is the most important message that we can learn as those of the nations, and learning. This is part of not having a religion. There is no religion in being a fruit that becomes the tree of life for someone else. There is no need for religion in that. That's why there was no religion in the beginning. This is the idyllic, or I have Scotty, I'm messing up my words again. This is the utopian view from God. Do you want utopia? Then your fruits of your life will be a tree of life for someone else. That is utopia. Go ahead, Scotty.
As you was saying that, presenting that, my mind is flowing over to the first chapter in the book of Psalms, Tehillim, and the third verse. Can I read that verse?
Go ahead.
He shall be, well, let me read the second verse with it. But his desire is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditate day and night. He shall be as a tree planted beside rivulets of water, which brings forth its fruit in its season, and its leaves shall not wither. Whatsoever he does prospers. And I just kind of happen to think of that. We, being a tree of life, our righteousness produces more righteousness. Our
Right.
that. So, will you elaborate on that?
Our reward is the opportunity to do another commandment that will bring fruit, and bring life. And I'm going to say this right here, what I was going to say at the end. We're going to be getting into these behavioral guidelines that was given. And I'm going to be going through them slowly. I'm not going to just go, we're going to be done. And we're not going to be done in a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. We may not even be done with one. There are seven, like the days of the week, like the candlesticks of the menorah. There is 7 behavioral guidelines. And we're going to just slowly go through these. Now, I'm going to be starting with the prohibition of theft. And I'm going to explain next week. Next week's class is going to be a kind of an introduction into the study of the prohibition of theft. We're going to be looking at Jonah, and we're going to be looking at the flood as this introduction so that you can understand it. Because it is the main, really, it is the deepest behavioral guideline of humanity, because it includes theft and personal property, personal behavior. There's a ton of, there's an eternity of actually information there. We could probably spend eternity on that one. We're not going to. It may seem like it, but we're not going to. But this class is leading up to, we're going to start discussing and learning these behavioral guidelines that produces, when you do these, it produces the fruit that becomes the tree of life that you become. You become like a tree of life. It produces that fruit for others so they can live. And when others do these, it produces what you need to live. And it just completely, if we would just do this as humanity, it would envelop the whole earth. And we would not have any of the ills that we have today. Would not have any of the sicknesses. Would not have anything that is what we consider an ill. As I've said before. So what is the fruit of righteousness? We'll bring this down to a close here. What is the fruit of righteousness? This question arises when one thinks of the verse quoted from Proverbs, the fruit of the righteous is the tree of life, and realizes that a tree is not a fruit. It appears that the verse should have read, that the fruit of the righteous is the fruit of life. Therefore, it can be interpreted and hinted also that the intention of the righteous should be, at the time when he performs good deeds, that goal should be to look upon these deeds as fruit of the tree of life. When you observe, like this, the commandment, not to steal, not to, the prohibition of theft, there's fruit that you're going to bear. And we're going to be getting into that as we study this, and you're going to start seeing what fruits bears out by the observance of the prohibition of theft. It says that the goal should be that when they look upon the fruits of the tree of life, means that there should be no intention of receiving a reward either in this world or the next. The intention should rather be, it means of this particular commandment, God will give him the privilege of doing another one. As is written in the Ethics of the Fathers, Do not be as the servants who serve their master in order to get a reward. Rather, the reward is the reward of the commandment should be gratitude for the privileges of doing another commandment. And that justifies referring to the commandment as the tree of life. Because in the addition to being the fruit itself is also produces fruit, meaning more commandments, as well as good life that one builds by performing them. And like I said, if we examine a tree, whether it be an oak tree or even, let's say, an apple tree, is to produce fruit is to produce more of that fruit. That is its reward. It continues to give. Like I said, the oak tree continues to give. In its whole life, it is giving of itself, never taking in a reward for itself. Let's take a tree that doesn't even have fruit, edible fruit. What does it have to give? It's green. It's absorbing carbon dioxide and giving off oxygen so that there's life on this planet. So what does that tell us? No matter who you are, you have something to give. You're not a barren tree. There's no barren trees in the forest of humanity. You've just got to find out where you have something to give. Everyone, like I said, everyone has an individual path. There are musicians who gives us joy, gives us being able to reflect from the sounds of the music they make. Now, there are some that just make noise, but you have engineers that can build great things. And you wonder, I mean, sometimes I wonder I'll be honest, this is maybe a simple thing, but who was the first one that thought of an internal combustion engine? Oh, I'm going to make this, make it explode, and this turns up here, and this turns this over here, and down the road we go. I would have never thought of that in 100 million years. But someone did in their path. God gave them the ability to think, to invent the internal combustion engine. Someone to create the light bulb, someone to harness electricity. Everyone produces. We're not barren. Well, I just work at a restaurant and wait tables. You're producing a need. Well, I'm a janitor. I mop the floors at the high school. That has to be done. Regardless, it's not to be little. Whatever you're doing in your life, you're producing. You are a tree of life. You're producing fruit for someone to live around you. And it doesn't have to just be spiritual. It's not to be righteous is not a religion. To be righteous is to produce fruit so those around you can live. It's that simple. To live in the harmony and the peace that the Creator created us to have. Told you I was excited about this. Scotty, did I answer the question that you asked that you didn't want to ask a while ago?
Yes, you did it. You did it great. I want to throw something in. May I throw something in, Terry?
Yeah. That's what I had to cover tonight as far as the message.
I think it was awesome. You know, a lot of people feel like they're not worthy. You know, I want to do some grand thing. Without, the greatest thing we can do is take the bad, you talked about the leaves, taking the bad air and filtering it through the help of the sun and producing air so you and I can breathe. Who else but the creator could put that together? That the sunlight can cause that leaf to absorb in, and we have that same ability. We have that same ability to take the bad and filter it and find the good in it and produce it out. So great class, Terry. Great class.
See,
My mind is going.
I'm just going to use the term because it's a modern term for Hebrew, B'nai Noah, children of Noah. That is the life of a Noahide. Is to be, and actually the life of every human being, which are all Noahides, depending on it. It doesn't matter where God planted you. Our goal is our fruit is to be a tree of life. That is our direction.
Awesome. Great class, Terry. Great class.
Anybody got any questions or any discussion? We got a little bit of time here.
Let me put us on gallery view. Now, the ones that doesn't have their picture in, you're not going to see them, but we see Thomas and the others. So, Thomas, you got a question? Amuela, there's Amuela. You got a question? We got a lot of questions in on the radio, but I'm going to have to filter through them. I'm going to have to kind of go through those. And awesome class. Amuela, you look like was you going to ask something? No. Okay. All right. Terry, are you ready to come to a close then?
Oh, we can. I just want to remind everyone, God willing, next week, I'm going to hopefully be doing an introduction to the prohibition of theft. We're going to study the prohibition of theft, which includes stealing and robbery. It includes our personal reaction, understanding the boundaries of others, and all kinds of good stuff. But we're going to start by looking at Nineveh, the message of Jonah, just briefly. I'm not going to cover the whole thing, and the flood, to understand that theft is the one commandment that stirs our Creator enough that it can not be pretty on our end. It has to do with how we treat one another. And so it's got some really good information there that, like I said, God willing, we'll start next week studying the prohibition of theft. And then we're going to go through a lot of it, and then we'll move on to another one. There's 7 of them that God gave Adam, and he gave Adam 6 and gave Noah the 7th one after the flood. And this is, like I was saying before, this is the information that the Guardians points us to. This is the very information. They're pointing us back to the first lessons of the Creator to humanity. That's never changed. But we changed. We forgot. We created things trying to do it our way. And the beauty of it now is we can learn to do it His way.
Yeah. And
have the peace that we talked about. So
awesome class, Terry. I want to say real quick, Sally and Laura and Veronica were on Facebook. There were others. They didn't type any comment in, so I don't know who they were, but there were others that were watching also on YouTube. And I just got to say again, great class, Terry.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to tell everybody that's watching, make sure you give it the thumbs up. Make sure you share. Make sure you subscribe to Torah for the Nations YouTube channel, and then on the Facebook page. And I can't wait till next week. Veronica put on Facebook, can't wait till next week. So looking forward to it. Okay, Terry.
Thank you everyone for coming and joining in. We live in exciting times.
Yes. I want to ask everybody, please remember Rabbi Pesach in your prayers this week, that he would get strength. He just needed some little bit of little break. But I think he's still doing the Sunday nights. Is that correct, Terry?
He's doing the Sunday nights. He does have a surgery that's coming up after the Pesach holiday. I believe that's what he said. So he's getting ready for all of that, getting ready for the spring holidays and everything. And so we are just stepping in and helping him out where is needed. Well, we just like I said, continue to hold him up and just let's hold whatever nation you're in, hold your leaders up and the people in your families around you, no matter where you're at. We need to hold each other up as much as we can in prayer before the Creator.
Right. Okay, everybody. I'm going to stop the live stream. We shall see you next